I wish I had learned 70 years ago. I'm 103 years old. I've lived through wars, recessions, celebrations, heartbreaks, weddings, funerals, and more ordinary Tuesdays than I could ever count. I've buried 3 husbands. I've buried one of my sons. I've watched friends disappear one by one until almost everyone I knew when I was young became a memory. And after more than a century of living, there's one truth I wish someone had forced me to understand when I was 33. Not 83, not 93, 33. Because if I had understood it then, I would have lived differently. I would have made different phone calls. I would have stayed at the dinner table a little longer. I would have put down my phone. I would have listened more carefully when someone I loved told me a story I'd already heard 10 times. And most importantly, I would have stopped assuming there would always be a tomorrow. Because here's the painful truth. We live as though we have forever, while spending the only thing we can never get back, our time. And if you're over 60, I want you to stay with me today. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't something I learned from a book. I learned it by living long enough to lose almost everything I once thought would always be there. Before we continue, if you appreciate honest stories and life lessons from people who have lived through the things you're living through now, subscribe to After 60 Life Wisdom. And I'd like to ask you something. What is one person you wish you had spent more time with when you still had the chance? You don't have to tell us their whole story. Just leave their first name, or simply write, "I wish I had more time." You may be surprised how many people reading your comment feel exactly the same way. Now let me tell you where I learned this lesson. My name is Dorothy, and I was 33 years old when my life changed forever. It was a Friday in 1955. I remember the date because I had been looking forward to the weekend. My husband, Robert, and I were planning to go dancing. We had been married for 8 years. We had 2 little boys. Robert worked at a steel mill. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He wasn't the kind of man people wrote newspaper articles about. He was simply a good man, a steady man. Every morning before he left for work, he would kiss my forehead and say, "See you tonight, Dorothy." And I always assumed he would. That Friday, he didn't come home. There had been an accident at the mill. They told me it happened quickly. They told me he didn't suffer. People say those things because they want to make the unbearable easier to carry. But there's something they don't tell you about sudden loss. When someone dies unexpectedly, they take something with them. They take all the words you thought you had time to say. Every "I love you" you postponed. Every apology you thought could wait. Every conversation you were too tired to have. Every hug you cut short because you had somewhere else to be. Every ordinary evening you assumed would happen again. I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night. The boys were asleep. Robert's chair was empty, and I made myself a promise. I promised I would never waste another day. I promised I would live intentionally. I promised I would love more openly. I promised I would stop postponing joy. And for a little while, I tried. I hugged my boys more. I said I love you more often. I paid attention. But then life started moving again. And that's where I made my biggest mistake. Because tragedy teaches you something. But time makes you forget. You start thinking you have plenty of it again. You get busy. You make plans. You worry about bills. You clean the house. You answer emails. You go to work. You tell yourself you'll call tomorrow. You'll visit next weekend. You'll take that trip next year. You'll have that conversation when things calm down. And slowly, without realizing it, you return to the same illusion. There will always be more time. I married again a few years later. His name was Charles. He was a wonderful man. We spent 42 years together. 42 years. And do you know what my greatest regret is about those 42 years? It isn't the arguments. It isn't the financial problems. It isn't the disagreements. It's the ordinary evenings. The Tuesday nights, the quiet afternoons. The moments that seemed too ordinary to matter. There were evenings when Charles wanted to take a walk and I said, "Not tonight. I'm too busy." There were nights when I was doing laundry instead of sitting beside him. There were conversations when I was physically in the room but mentally somewhere else. At the time, those moments felt insignificant. Now, at 103, I would give almost anything to have one of those ordinary Tuesday nights back. Just one. That's something you understand differently when you get old. You don't only miss the big moments, you miss the little ones. You miss the moments you didn't realize were precious until they became impossible. My son William died when he was 45. He had cancer. I was 65. I remember sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his hand. He looked at me and said, "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't call more." I wanted to tell him, "Don't apologize." I wanted to say, "We should have called each other every day." But instead I held his hand and told him we had enough time. We didn't. And I still remember those words. We had enough time. What a strange thing to say. Because none of us actually knows how much time is enough. Do you? Do you know how many more birthdays you'll have with your spouse? How many more Christmas dinners with your children? How many more Sunday mornings with your parents? How many more conversations with your closest friend? Neither did I. That's the problem. When you're young, you think the future is something you own. When you get older, you realize the future was never promised. And yet most of us continue living as if it was. We say, "I'll travel when I retire. I'll call my sister when work slows down. I'll write that book someday. I'll learn the piano later. I'll visit my old friend next month. I'll spend more time with my grandchildren when I have more free time." But here's what I learned after 103 years. Later is one of the most dangerous words in the English language, because sometimes later comes, and sometimes it doesn't. You may think I'm trying to make you afraid. I'm not. I want to make you awake. There's a difference. I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. I'm not telling you to abandon your responsibilities. I'm not telling you to spend all your money or run away from your life. I'm asking something much simpler. Pay attention to the life you're already living. Look at the person sitting across from you. Really look at them. Listen when they speak. Put your phone down. Stay at the table 5 minutes longer. Ask your husband how his day really was. Call your sister. Visit your mother. Ask your grandson what he's excited about. Tell your daughter you're proud of her. Don't assume they know. Say it, because one day you'll wish you had. I know this because I'm a grandmother now, and I understand something from the other side. My surviving son, James, is 76. He visits me every Sunday, rain or shine, every Sunday. He's a wonderful son. And every time he leaves, I watch him walk toward his car. And sometimes I wonder, will I see him next Sunday? At my age, I understand that every goodbye carries that possibility. But here's the strange part. It's not actually different for you. You simply don't think about it as often. Every goodbye could be your last goodbye. Every hug could be the last hug. Every family dinner could be the last one where everyone is sitting around the same table. Every conversation could be the last conversation. That's not meant to frighten you. It's meant to remind you to be present. I have a great-great-granddaughter named Sophie. She's 16. Recently, she came to visit me. She sat in the room with me, but most of her attention was on her phone. I didn't get angry. I didn't lecture her. I remembered being young. When you're 16, a text message feels urgent. A notification feels important. You believe there will always be another afternoon with the people sitting beside you, but there won't always be. And someday, Sophie may remember that visit. She may remember my face. She may remember the room. And I hope she remembers putting the phone down. Because that's what I want for her, and that's what I want for you. I want you to avoid a very particular kind of regret. Not the regret of making mistakes. Mistakes are part of being human. I'm talking about the regret of being there without really being there. The regret of looking at your phone while someone you love is talking. The regret of saying "not now" too many times. The regret of postponing the visit. The regret of assuming your parents will always be there. The regret of believing your children will always have time for you. The regret of thinking you'll repair the relationship later. That kind of regret is painful because you can't go back and fix it. I'm 103 years old. I've had a very long life, longer than I ever imagined. And I can tell you something with absolute honesty. The moments I treasure most aren't the impressive ones. They're the ordinary ones. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my boys while they ate pancakes. I remember walking beside Charles when neither of us had anywhere important to go. I remember Robert kissing my forehead before work. I remember quiet conversations. I remember laughter. I remember holding someone's hand. I remember moments when nobody was rushing. Nobody was performing. Nobody was trying to accomplish anything. We were simply together. And that's the part I wish I had understood earlier. Your life isn't made primarily of big moments. Your life is made of ordinary moments. And ordinary moments become precious only after you realize they were never ordinary at all. Think about your own life. What is one completely ordinary memory that has become precious to you? Maybe it's your mother making coffee. Maybe it's your father fixing something in the garage. Maybe it's your spouse sitting beside you on the porch. Maybe it's your children running through the house. Maybe it's a friend calling you just to say hello. Tell me about it in the comments. Not because I need the engagement, but because someone else reading your memory may suddenly remember someone they love. And maybe they'll make that phone call tonight. That's how we keep these little pieces of life alive. I've spent more than a century learning something I wish I had understood much sooner. You don't need to live a perfect life. You don't need to accomplish everything. You don't need to become famous. You don't need to have the biggest house or the most money. You need to be present for the people and moments that matter. Because everything around us is constantly competing for our attention. Our phones, our work, our worries, our ambitions, our endless lists, our regrets about yesterday, our fears about tomorrow. And while we're busy looking backward or forward, life is happening right in front of us. That's the tragedy. We spend so much time preparing to live that we forget to live. I wish I could go back to that 33-year-old woman sitting alone at her kitchen table after Robert died. I would sit beside her, I would take her hand, and I would tell her, "Dorothy, you're going to forget this lesson. You're going to get busy again. You're going to become distracted. You're going to take people for granted, and you're going to make mistakes. But that's okay. Your job isn't to remember perfectly. Your job is to remember and return. Remember and return. Return to the person sitting beside you. Return to the conversation. Return to your family. Return to your own life. Return to love. You will drift away. We all do. The question isn't whether you'll get distracted. The question is whether you'll notice and come back. I'm 103 years old. I've lived thousands and thousands of days. And if I could give you only one piece of advice after all those years, it would be this. Don't wait for life to remind you that it's temporary. You already know. You just forget. So remember today. Call someone, visit someone, forgive someone, thank someone. Sit beside someone without looking at your phone. Ask an older person about their childhood. Ask your children what they're worried about. Tell someone you love them. And if there's something you've been postponing because you keep telling yourself you have time, maybe today is the day to stop saying later. Because I can tell you something that took me more than 70 years to understand. Later is not a place. Later is not guaranteed. Later is simply a word we use when we're afraid to choose today. And today is the only day you actually have. So before you leave this video, I want you to do something for me. Think of one person, just one. Someone you love, someone you haven't called enough, someone you've been meaning to visit, someone you've taken for granted, someone you miss. And ask yourself, if I knew I only had one more conversation with this person, what would I say? Now, don't just think about it. Say it. Do it. Make the call. Send the message. Walk through the door. Sit beside them. Because someday you'll wish you had. I'm Dorothy. I'm 103 years old. And I've spent more than a century learning that the greatest regrets aren't always about what we did. Sometimes they're about what we kept postponing. The hug, the phone call, the visit, the apology, the I love you, the ordinary Tuesday night. So don't wait until you're 103 to understand what I'm telling you now. Be there while they're still here. And if this story touched something inside you, leave a comment below and tell me, who are you going to call today? Just write their name, or write, I'm calling someone I love. Maybe your comment will remind another person to make their call too. And if you want more honest stories, hard-earned lessons, and wisdom about living well after 60, subscribe to After 60, Life Wisdom, and stay with us. Because none of us knows how many chapters remain, but we can choose to make the chapter we're living right now count. Thank you for spending these moments with me. And wherever you are tonight, I hope you put down your phone, look at someone you love, and really see them. Because I promise you this, the people you love won't always be here, but the love you give them today can stay with you for the rest of your life.